Taisen returns for another batshit crazy episode, pitting a lot of warriors against each other with lots of flashy action and costumes, giving us backstories on one of the fighters. Not only that, but actually delving a little bit more into the deeper lore of the Juni Taisen world and why this entire thing even takes place in the first place. Basically, it's a giant proxy war, which is meant to reduce actual war in the world. It's one of those crazy things that you see in anime all of the time in a weird post-apocalyptic-like setting, where they realize if they continue to war with one another, they're just going to destroy everything. So, if they try to isolate it into one event with only a certain amount of people, the casualties will not only drop, but they can outright prevent total destruction. We've seen concepts like this in G Gundam, when they decide to have a giant tournament on Earth with fighting robots, and we're seeing it here now, man. It's just as insane. There's even a group of Illuminati people who are actually watching the entire Juni Taisen, and they're having a little fun with it because about halfway through, when there's only so many opponents left, they're going to start betting on all of the fighters, so that's going to be really awesome. I'm guessing little by little we're going to get some snippets of really what's been going on behind the scenes of the Juni Taisen, but still, that's not what this whole episode is about. This episode is about a lot of ridiculous action. If you were wanting to see a little bit more of monkey versus rabbit, well, you're going to get it in this episode, and it looks really crispy while it's doing it. The story, unfortunately, doesn't really go anywhere. That's not really the main focus of that episode, but if you wanted to see some cool animated action, it's here, it looks awesome, and it's also got zombie birds which are attacking Monkey, which she is attacking with her monkey kung fu. Saying all this out loud is awesome, and that's exactly why you should check it out. But the real focus of this episode right here, without a doubt, belongs to the sheep. That's right, the sheep. He's the old dude who is the master of explosives and actually has horns coming out of his head. I thought it was just something to do with his hat or something. No, this dude literally has horns coming out of his head. Not gonna question it. We've seen talking monkeys in the show. They've made it clear that things aren't exactly like they are on a real world Earth here. So I'm just gonna accept it for what it is. But we get this guy's entire backstory. We even get to see him younger, and we get to learn that basically he was this amazing explosive assassin. He always worked with explosives and used that to his advantage and tricked people, and he made a very big name for himself and even was able to go into the Juni Taisen tournament. And we even get to see some snippets of how he won the last tournament, which it wasn't the last one, it was when he was much younger, but it was a crazy looking scenario where somehow all of the fighters or the people who were representing in the tournament were in space, and they were in a giant space station, and he somehow was able to escape, trapping all of them in there, and just blew the entire thing up. It's insane and crazy, and it kind of makes me want to see the previous tournaments altogether. In many ways, if they don't completely reveal the logistics behind the tournament, who's running it, why it's going on the entire time, this is a series that kind of Fate Stay Night could just go on forever by just constantly showing us all of these different Juni Taisens with new opponents and new things going on every single time. There could be twists, they could be crazy, and I like the concept right there. Patent pending. I know it's based on a light novel series, so it doesn't really matter anyway. Point is, the rest of the episode is dedicated to the sheep, and like I said, the first half of his life is all about him being this young warrior assassin, and he wins the Juni Taisen, and he gets a wish. Now, what is this guy's wish going to be? It's simply just to be with his family, and that's when they start to paint this guy as a much more sympathetic character than a lot of the ones that we've seen in the series, while still being a very hardened and hardcore warrior. That is something that we do have to remember about this guy. Still, that being said, the fact that he has this whole backstory about him just wanting to be with his family and spend time with his grandson, there's even scenes of him reading to his grandson and everything, it's very, very heartwarming. And then finally, the current Juni Taisen tournament comes up, and his grandson apparently is going to have to be the one to represent the sheep in this conflict. And that's when the sheep decides that he's actually going to do it himself. He doesn't want his grandson to go into battle, and that's basically why he's doing this, to protect the legacy of his family and to not have them get dragged into any more of these Juni Taisen tournaments. It's really insane, it's really noble, and I can't wait to see more of him in action, because despite the fact that he's an old guy, he's very strategic and very shrewd when it comes to his strategies. He's even attacked by the Ox in this episode and manages to catch him off guard with a bomb, although that bomb doesn't really do anything to him. And speaking of the Ox, they also go back to his battle with a horse, which basically just sort of ended in a stalemate. We still don't really know fully how this battle came to a big conclusion here, but neither of them continue to fight, and apparently they just went their separate ways. And it might have something to do with the fact that the horse is just like so indestructible with his like iron armor or whatever it is that ability is. Also, getting back to this other plot point again with the sheep, I really thought that it was clever that of the opponents, he actually did not eat the poisonous jewel. He actually just hid it in his beard. He instantly knew that there was something wrong with that, and I wonder if that's considered cheating or something that could actually get him in trouble, or if it actually is just a part of the actual strategy of the game, but is a really great move. And then there's the tiger. This is the character they start to build up at the very end of the episode, which is the one character they've definitely been focusing on the least in the series. We haven't seen much of her. She just seems kind of like a weird, young, loving, drunk, fun character who wants nothing to do with the violence or, like, competition of this tournament. And that's why she's just sort of hanging out in the park casually, just throwing back some red wine and getting steadily drunker. When the sheep comes upon her, they decide that it looks like they're going to have an encounter with each other. Whether this is going to lead to a battle or an alliance remains to be seen, but we'll see that in the next episode. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Juni Taisen? Just a lot going on in this episode. They juggled a lot, and it's still a big accomplishment of the series to not have a main character, but to be able to jump back and forth between each of these people and actually make them all be interesting. And that's because we are presented with their backstories, their interesting backstories, and they're not boring. It's not like we spend a lot of time in one place. We're always jumping around to something that's always really interesting, and it's a great example of showing and not telling. They're not telling a lot in this series. They're not giving us all the answers that we want, but they're doing a lot of it through the visuals to the point where it actually does work, where in the span of just like half an episode, we know everything we need to know about the sheep character just through the imagery that they actually showed us and the emotions that he displayed through his animation. That's a pretty big accomplishment, especially considering how many characters there actually are in the series. I have a pretty firm understanding of all of them. I just think it's really great. I also still love all the little details in this episode. Like, there's a scene where the rat is going up against the monkey who's still, not the monkey, the snake, who's, like, still decapitated, by the way. And I never thought about it before, but, like, how does this guy see? He doesn't even have a head, and he actually feels the vibrations and stuff in the ground, which makes sense because that's something you could do. You know, you could just feel for it, but it also makes sense, too, because he is a snake, and just like real-life snakes, they actually feel the vibrations in the ground, so it's little details like that that I think are really clever, how they always manage to tie in their animalistic traits to their actual, like, personas. Like the sheep himself, like a lot of times when he talks at the end of his sentences, or when he sounds really tired, he has kind of like this, like, bah sound, kind of like an actual sheep, and he incorporates that into his voice, which I think is a really, really nice touch. Overall, this was a fantastic episode of Juni Taisen, and really I just can't wait to see more of how all of this is going to go down, and all the crazy events, and who is going to come out on top. Not to mention, like I said, the action in this episode was solid. Monkey versus Rabbit is still really exciting, and just watching Rabbit every single time he's on screen is fun just because of how over-the-top, scary, and fun his character is. So, there it is. I liked this episode a lot. Like, if I only have one complaint, again, there are just some moments that look great, and there are other moments where you can tell they got a little bit lazy in terms of the character design and the actual animation, but for the most part, this was a solid addition to the series, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. So check it out, guys. If any of you did watch the episode, tell me what you thought about it, all your thoughts in the comment section below, and of course, subscribe to the channel for more anime and manga reviews, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay damn, baby.